Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 29-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things personal injury law related. And up today, did you know that September is Pain Awareness Month? I bet you didn't. It's a little known awareness time for something that affects millions of people, and that is chronic pain. So, September is Pain Awareness Month. It's a time to shed light on the very real and often invisible struggles of those living with chronic pain. And if, depending on how much you pay attention to news and culture and things like that, if you do not think that there's a nationwide problem with pain, then you probably don't know about the nationwide problem that we had with opioids and opioid addiction. So, a few years ago, we had a complete turnaround in how pain was going to be controlled with medication. For years, people living in chronic pain were prescribed opioids, oftentimes hydrocodone, Vicodin, things like that, and oxycodone, right? And surely everybody's heard that term out there, that drug. But people that were living with chronic pain were put on these medicines, and these medicines are highly addictive. And it became a huge problem with people falling into addiction to these medications due to their chronic pain. What started with the attempt at controlling this chronic pain, giving them their life back so they could function, turned into the complete opposite. They ended up in addiction, they couldn't function, and it caused all kinds of problems through their lives. So, again, chronic pain is a real situation, and it's a real problem that we have. And September, the whole idea is to bring awareness to it and figure out, what's the best way to handle it. What are the best medical options out there? But today on this podcast, because again, we talk about personal injury law, we're going to connect the dots between Pain Awareness Month and personal injury law. We'll explore what pain and suffering really means from a legal standpoint in Missouri. I'll share some examples of Missouri cases to illustrate how these claims work in the real world. We'll talk about my experiences representing people that every day have chronic pain due to accident or injury. And most importantly, we'll discuss your rights if you've been injured and are living with pain due to someone else's negligence. So, why do we even have this month? Well, it was established again to increase the understanding of pain as a serious public health issue. We're not just talking about the temporary pain of a stub toe here. Make sure we understand the difference. This isn't because somebody cut themselves and that hurts for a few days. This is ongoing chronic pain, will not go away. Somebody is living with it day in and day out, and very well maybe for the rest of their lives. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about pain that persists maybe for weeks, months, or years. Again, millions of Americans live with chronic pain. It can be debilitating, affecting every aspect of a person's life, their ability to work, their relationships, and their mental health. And again, if you're listening to this, there's a good chance at some point you've experienced some kind of significant pain in your life that wasn't a short term event, it carried on. Here's what I know personally. At the age of 36, I started experiencing back pain. And it's one of those things where, I've been hospitalized before due to uncontrolled back pain, one of the most debilitating types of pain Well, I guess for me speaking, certainly that I'd ever experienced. And in talking with others that have chronic back pain or susceptibility to back pain, I think everybody universally agrees. If you throw your back out, it can be, days, weeks, months of serious pain, very limiting in what you can do, how you can participate in life. It can be a real problem. And this isn't just something to tough out. It's a real medical condition that deserves recognition and proper management. So, how does this tie into the legal world? In my line of work, I see firsthand how life altering pain can be, especially when it's the result of an accident or an injury. Every day, I have clients who have sustained some type of serious injury, and a lot of those, it's for some amount of time, maybe weeks, maybe months. For others, we have clients that will forever have some level of pain that has to be controlled. So in our personal injury world, we see it every day in some way, shape, or form. Now, in legal terms, we describe pain and suffering, and that's something, that's thrown out all the time, right? People say, oh, they're going to have pain and suffering. What, but nobody ever takes a minute to really dial in and think about, I mean, what does that mean? Is this a sore neck for 2 days, or is this a situation where someone has to be on a spinal stimulator to control the pain they have from their back injury? And a spinal stimulator is something that, is implanted into the spine and is there pretty much for the remainder of someone's life in an effort to control pain. So again, I can't emphasize enough the degrees of which we're talking about here. This isn't just a simple short term pain situation. But as far as the legal world is concerned, this pain and suffering, as I'll go ahead and call it that for this purposes, this is a non economic damage in a legal claim. So, what does that mean? That means there's no dollar bills attached. There's no receipts, right? So economic damages are the tangible costs. There's medical bills, lost wages, property damage, and those are relatively easy to calculate, right? We can figure out, well, what did doctors charge? How much time did you lose from work? What was the damage to the vehicle? What's it going to cost to repair it? Or is it not repairable and it's totaled out? What's the value of the car? Pretty easy. But when it comes to these non economic damages like pain and suffering, these are intangible losses. They compensate a person for the physical pain and the emotional distress that has been endured because of an injury. So, how do you prove pain and suffering in Missouri in a personal injury claim? This is the crucial question because, again, since there's no bill or receipt for pain, how do we demonstrate to an insurance company or a jury this loss? And I can tell you this as a personal injury lawyer that has tried cases to juries many a time, you have to show the effect, the pain, the emotional distress has had on the person that sustained the injury. And how do you do that? Well, you show literally, well, there's let's break it down a little bit. There's about 4 ways you can show it. Number one, medical records. So if there's consistent documentation from doctors, physical therapists, specialists, that's going to be key because these records are what are being recorded by medical professionals based on either the person that's injured has been reporting or through objective means of testing that shows nerve damage, things like that. So medical records become a critical piece of evidence in showing pain and suffering. Now, again, another way to prove pain and suffering is through expert testimony. We often bring in medical experts to explain the nature of the injuries and why they would cause the level of pain being described. And again, sometimes you have to have that medical testimony to illustrate to a jury exactly why the body is producing pain due to this injury and how, you know, parts of the body and nerves and all that interrelate and produce pain. So, medical expert testimony can be critical in these types of situations. The other one is personal journals. Again, we generally ask our clients, keep track, keep a journal of what you're going through as you've sustained this injury, you're getting treated, and you're going about your day-to-day life and you're experiencing these problems. Keep a log of that, because sometimes, as these things carry on, weeks, months, years, you can lose track of exactly what it was that you were going through. So it's very important, because at the end of the day, the person that's injured being able to document their daily pain levels, the activities they can no longer do, and the emotional toll that it's taking is going to be critical to demonstrating to a jury there has been a real sustainable loss that needs to be compensated from somebody else's wrongdoing or negligence. So again, it's really important that when people are injured, they are keeping track of all the difficulties they're having, and never underestimate the effect that pain and the limitations that brings and the discomfort, or even worse. I mean, discomfort may be too light of a word, but that can take a huge mental toll on somebody who maybe was very active, was working all the time, was engaging in activities, helping around the house, taking care of their kids, all these things that have been derailed by a chronic pain condition. It can really work on somebody's mental state, not being able to live a normal life due to pain. So there's no magic formula in Missouri for calculating pain and suffering. That's very clear. And that's why it takes all these various components to really illustrate. You've got to illustrate to people that maybe have never suffered from chronic pain. This isn't just simple ouch type stuff. This is stuff that affects a person day in, day out, maybe hourly. This is a really impactful situation on a person's life. And again, there's no magic formula. So you have to put this together so that it seems tangible to a jury to fully appreciate what somebody is living through with chronic pain. Let's just look at a few examples to kind of illustrate the types of scenarios that we see here in the personal injury world. Let's consider a very common scenario, a rear end collision on I-70 in Columbia. The initial injury might be diagnosed as whiplash, right? Which is, again, one of those terms, kind of like pain and suffering. It gets thrown around. It seems to minimize the pain that's involved. But if you've ever experienced a whiplash type injury, which again is essentially muscle spasms, your muscles are reacting, they're tightening up, and it can produce intense pain, debilitating pain for somebody that's going through that. But anyway, the initial injury might be diagnosed as whiplash. I do air quotes there, and a back sprain. And again, a sprain is, involving the musculature around the back, around the spine, and those types of things. But what happens when that sprain turns into chronic debilitating back pain? So maybe it wasn't just a sprain. Maybe the pain continued on. The person gets an MRI. An MRI is really the only diagnostic tool that can show soft tissue type injury, can show if there was a disc injury in the spine. This is what's really important. And what happens when it turns into chronic debilitating back pain. So we'll walk through how we would build a case for this type of client, focusing on the long-term impact on their ability to work at their construction job, enjoy their hobbies like fishing at the Lake of the Ozarks, for example. Again, you look at the importance of showing a consistent treatment history, right? The person was injured in this accident. They got treatment fairly shortly after the accident, and the treatment has continued. The complaints have been the same or going downhill, meaning getting worse, things like that. Sometimes we need to bring in a vocational expert. Again, if the person's not able to return to work, they may be disabled out of this. A vocational expert can discuss what their employability looks like in the marketplace and whether they can actually go back to work in some role or if they are permanently totally disabled because of their injury. And, that can then, we could bring in an expert economist to project out if this person cannot return to work, what that financial loss looks like over this person's lifetime due to this chronic pain. Now, another example that you very well may see in the personal injury world is a fall and the development of complex regional pain syndrome. This is something that can be very debilitating for people that develop that condition. So, for example, there was a claim for a fall at a grocery store in Springfield. Again, a simple fall can sometimes lead to a devastating and poorly understood condition like complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS is what it's generally referred to as in the medical world. But again, CRPS is a condition that comes on and basically it produces a constant pain source in your body from some type of an injury. And that constant pain has to be managed for a person to just be able to live, let alone actively live. But they can't just live in pain because obviously nobody can just live in serious debilitating pain. It has to be controlled. And again, outside of medicines, there's pain management options where you can get injections from pain management doctors to try to reduce inflammation, things like that. And there are a slew of medicines that are used in an effort to control pain as well. Again, today, opioids have been dramatically dialed down as an option due to their highly addictive nature. So, medicines generally look like nerve pain blockers, things like that. But again, this case out of Springfield is a great example of an injury that kind of seems minor at first with, something that may just be looking like a soft tissue type injury. And then it develops into this much more complex pain syndrome that basically is permanent, will not go away. So the other thing we can look at is a motorcycle accident and the invisible injury. I use air quotes there. So what does that mean? Well, let's say there's a motorcycle accident on Highway 65. The rider has some road rash, a broken arm that heals, but they are left with persistent nerve pain and post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Again, these are often called invisible injuries, air quotes there, because the physical wounds have healed, but the pain and the emotional trauma remain. And again, we see PTSD in a lot of accidents. If it's a serious accident that's involved, a lot of times these types of accidents have a very big mental impact on the person that was involved in it and that sustained the injury from it. But, you look at how we demonstrate the reality of this pain through testimony from mental health professionals. Again, if you're dealing with something like PTSD, you're going to need an expert to come in and illustrate how exactly this is affecting the person that was injured. Like, what does this look like? Because not all of us are familiar with mental disorders, PTSD, anxiety, whatever that looks like. You've got to have somebody that is educated and experienced in this area to come in and explain and illustrate. And again, a client's own detailed accounts of their struggles is always going to be huge. And if they're able to come in and talk about the daily issues they face because of chronic pain or any other parts of the aftermath of an accident, that's going to be critical in really solidifying solid compensation for them coming out of an accident. So you have to remember this: pain is real and its impact on your life deserves to be taken seriously. Again, in my world, we see pain coming out of accidents, but people suffer from pain from degenerative conditions, genetic conditions, many other conditions. But again, here on this podcast and in my world, we're talking about pain that arises from injury and ends up being debilitating. And in Missouri, you have the right to seek compensation for your pain and suffering if it's the result of someone else's negligence. And again, documentation is your best friend. From medical records to a personal journal, the more you document your experience, the stronger your case will be. So if you've been in an accident and you're experiencing ongoing pain, it's crucial to speak with an experienced personal injury attorney. Like I've just sort of laid out, there's many different components to proving a debilitating condition of pain as it relates to injury and as it relates to someone else's negligence. So you can't just rely on your own knowledge and your own ability to put all that together. And again, especially if we're always planning on presenting this to a jury, even though we may never get there, we may get it resolved much sooner than that with the insurance company, but we're always planning. Like, this is how we're going to present to a jury what this client has gone through. And you cannot do that on your own, because we, as personal injury lawyers, we know who needs to be involved to help put all these pieces of the puzzle together. So remember this: don't let an insurance company downplay your. An attorney can help you navigate the legal process and fight for the fair compensation that you deserve. You've got a serious injury, you have debilitating pain, it has affected every part of your life, and you need to work to get the compensation you deserve from this experience. And as always, if you believe you do have a claim like this, you're welcome to give us a call. We're always happy to investigate, see how we can help. It's a free call. And until the next episode, please be safe and be well.